In the world of pro wrestling, there's only a handful of shows you can point to and say, this show ended up changing the industry forever. WrestleMania 1, Bash at the Beach 1996, WrestleMania 17, just to name a few. All these shows proved pivotal in changing the course of the wrestling industry. But ever since WrestleMania 17, the week WWE became the only major wrestling promotion in the United States, we haven't had a show that truly changed the world of pro wrestling. And this can be attributed to WWE growing really comfortable being the only major wrestling promotion in the United States. Little did WWE know in the wake of their complacency that a group of wrestlers were going to ignite a pro wrestling revolution. This is the story of a wrestling group known as the Elite, who put on a super indie show that gave WWE a run for their money and changed the landscape of the pro wrestling business forever. This is Tranquilo Club, and this is why All In is the most important wrestling show of the last decade. So the year is 2018, and a portion of the WWE audience is growing really tired with the product. Ratings, attendance, merch sales, basically everything you can think of is down for WWE. Meanwhile, due to the rise of social media, other wrestling has become more accessible to people more than ever. And the group that took most well advantage of this was the Bullet Club of New Japan Pro Wrestling. In particular though, the Elite. Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes led the Bullet Club to new heights. They were on fire in America. They were helping Ring of Honor set record gates. Bullet Club merch was selling so well that they even cut a deal with Hot Topic to carry official Bullet Club merch. And the Elite did it all on the back of social media. Being the Elite, a YouTube series created by the Young Bucks, became a huge hit with wrestling fans online. The show presented a more humanized version of the wrestlers while also including skits and storylines every now and then. The YouTube series would quickly build a cult-like following. Cody Rhodes, who had previously wrestled with WWE but had never really gotten the chance to be a top guy, would quickly use the Being the Elite platform to showcase character depth that he was never really allowed to show, which would end up with him winning over the fans rather quickly. And then you had Kenny Omega, the leader of the group, who was being lauded by many as the best wrestler in the world due to the wrestling clinics he was putting on in New Japan. In particular, his series with then IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Kazuchika Okada. And last but not least, the Young Bucks themselves. Matt and Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks, considered by many as the best tag team in the world, who made a name for themselves wrestling around the world, from the indies to full-fledged promotions like TNA and Ring of Honor, to eventually finding themselves in New Japan Pro Wrestling. To put it short, the Elite were a group of stars who were leading a pro wrestling movement outside of the WWE. They had all the momentum in the world, and the fans knew it. So much so that a fan would take to Twitter one day and ask Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter if he thought Ring of Honor could sell 10,000 tickets for a wrestling show. Meltzer would simply reply, "Not anytime soon." Cody Rhodes would reply to Dave Meltzer. He would say, "I'll take that bet, Dave. I already gave them their biggest buy rate, put the Bucks and I on the card, and 3 months to promote." And yes, this is the bet that would change the world of wrestling forever. And just to add a little bit of context here, 10,000 seats usually equates to a full-sized arena. In the entertainment business, if you can sell 10,000 tickets, that means you've made it. Now, in the context of pro wrestling, selling 10,000 tickets has even more significance. In the United States, no wrestling show had sold 10,000 tickets outside of the WWE since WCW went under. To put it in perspective, TNA, who were on Spike TV drawing 2 million viewers every week, could not sell 10,000 tickets if their lives depended on it. But the Elite had something that TNA never really had. They had goodwill with their fan base. As soon as the bet was made, speculation and debating would start on wrestling Twitter. There were a lot of skeptics, but even more so, there were a lot of people rallying behind the idea of this show happening. It went from being just a bet to being a movement. The idea of the show would morph from being a Ring of Honor show to being a super indie show self-financed by the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes. And they were not holding back. Wrestlers from all over the world were going to be brought in for the show, including Kazuchika Okada, Kota Ibushi, Rey Mysterio, Pentagon Jr., Ray Phoenix, just to name a few. The fact that Rhodes and the Jackson brothers weren't holding back would lead to the name of the show. The name would be All In. It would be announced that the event would take place in Hoffman Estates, Illinois at the Sears Center Arena over Labor Day weekend 2018. Tickets for the show would finally go on sale on May 2018, and to the shock of the wrestling world, the show would sell out in 30 minutes. This was unprecedented. The Elite had just sold out a 10,000 seat arena with no TV, only using promotion via the internet. To quote Brian Alvarez of Figure4Weekly.com, this is a group of fans who are tired of not getting what they want and who are willing to travel from all over to attend a show by a group of wrestlers who are going to try to give them their money's worth. And that's why the Elite's goodwill that they took years to build up was so crucial for the success of All In, and they knew they had to deliver, because this show had all the potential to change the course of the wrestling world. If you knew pro wrestling, then you knew how big of a deal this show was. But I don't think anybody could have predicted how pivotal this show would be in changing the landscape of the wrestling industry. On September 1st, 2018, All In would take place in front of over 11,000 fans to rave reviews from fans and critics alike. During the show's opening, Excalibur described the show better than I ever could. He called it a love letter to professional wrestling. And that's exactly what this show was. It had everything. There was a street fight between Joey Janela and Hangman Adam Page, where both wrestlers had star-making performances. It was also during this show where we got our first taste of some wrestlers that now dominate the wrestling scene, such as MJF and Britt Baker. Halfway through the show, we got arguably the highlight of the night, where Cody Rhodes challenged Nick Aldis for the NWA World title. In a match that had a big fight feel, and where Cody came off as the biggest babyface in the world, he would come out victorious and win the title that his father once famously held. The emotional post-match celebration was just the icing on the cake. Jericho's surprise attack on Kenny Omega after his match with Pentagon Jr. was also a highlight of the night. This was such a big moment because Chris Jericho himself said for years that he would never wrestle for anyone who wasn't Vince McMahon in the United States. The match between Okada and Marty Scurll was also a technical clinic. Okada just came off as such a massive fucking superstar. The crowd loved this guy. Of course, this match is now infamous for having gone over its allotted time and cutting the main event of the show short. That main event was a 6-man tag team match between the team of the Young Bucks and Kota Ibushi versus Ray Phoenix, Rey Mysterio, and Bandito. The match only went 11 minutes, but all the wrestlers involved made the most of the time they were given. The show would go off the air with only seconds to spare, but the Elite had done it. They had put on a show worthy of being called the largest independent wrestling show of all time. After the show went off the air, the Elite, with their close friends and family, took to the ring and celebrated with the fans. It was here where this whole group made a pact that no matter what happens next, they would all stick together, no matter where they go. The question on all the fans' minds was, what happens next? Will there be an All In 2? Because now there was an even bigger trust between the fans and the Elite after All In. It proved that there were now enough fans willing to spend money and support an alternative to the WWE. Little did we know that Tony Khan, son of billionaire NFL owner Shahid Khan, was lurking in the shadows, basically playing the part of Nick Fury, and putting together a team to form the largest alternative to WWE since WCW. All In is without a doubt the most important wrestling show of the last decade. It left a lasting mark on the wrestling industry, and it would serve as the precursor to All Elite Wrestling. But whenever I think about how the stars had to align perfectly for this show to happen, it always blows my fucking mind. From WWE running off fans because of their shitty product, to Cody Rhodes leaving WWE, to the Young Bucks making a name for themselves on the indies, to Kenny Omega becoming a major star in Japan, and of course the power of social media, The whole energy behind All In is just serendipitous. This group of wrestlers took a huge chance on themselves and they ended up winning big. Even I wouldn't have predicted this show leading to the foundation of a new wrestling promotion that was being funded by an NFL billionaire owner, and that they would also get their own TV show on TNT, the same channel where WCW Monday Nitro once aired, and directly competing with NXT, a WWE brand, and winning more often than not against them in the ratings. The formation of AEW also changed how WWE does business. They're now offering the wrestlers 5-year big money deals just to prevent them from jumping to AEW. But as we've already seen over the past year, to some wrestlers, money is not everything. For the first time in 20 years, we finally have a viable big money alternative to WWE. But most importantly, it's a show that fans actually like, with wrestlers they actually care about. The spirit of All In still exists within AEW with their pay-per-view All Out, which is basically the spiritual successor to the show. If you're a wrestling fan and you still haven't seen this show, I highly recommend you check it out because it serves as the beginning of a pro wrestling movement. In my opinion, All In is the WrestleMania of our generation. Cody Rhodes said it best about All In after the show was over. It felt like a revolution, and revolutions aren't just one night.